JD Vance felt confident mocking a representative on national television, labeling her an out-of-touch elitist, separated from real Americans while asserting he represented the forgotten working class, right up until Jasmine Crockett opened a folder marked FOA, Vance Donor Records. The occurrences during the subsequent 47 minutes resulted in his primary financial supporters abandoning him, forced 3 lobbyists to provide under-oath testimony, and alienated Ohio union workers from the individual who claimed to be their advocate. The timeline of his about-faces that left him speechless, the coal miner's daughter who confronted him as cameras recorded, and the question about just one sincere belief generated 21 seconds of silence broadcast throughout the country. A former military member walked out, a steel worker cried, and the graphic on the screen ticked through the longest 21 seconds in the history of American politics. This is the account of how a prosecutor serving as a lawmaker ended a political chameleon's rise with one simple question. The CNN studio illumination felt overwhelming even before the live broadcast began, with a crowd of 200 people filling the audience, including union members wearing UAW jackets, veterans in military hats, teachers holding documents about education funding cuts, and medical professionals still in their work scrubs. This was not your standard Washington Policy Group assembly. These were working Americans specifically invited to a town hall titled American Values, Politics, and Principle. Jake Tapper stood at the moderator's podium reviewing his notes one last time for this special primetime event projected to attract 45 million viewers. The format was simple. 2 politicians with significantly different approaches to representing working-class citizens would debate their core philosophies, take questions from the audience, and discuss specific policies. Senator JD Vance entered first, moving onto the stage with the practiced energy of an individual who had executed this routine countless times. His attire consisted of an expensive but understated suit. His tie was red, white, and blue, subtle yet deliberate, and as he walked, work boots were clearly visible on his feet, new ones still stiff with the leather barely creased, yet work boots nonetheless. He waved to the assembly, stopping to shake hands with an individual wearing a United Mine Workers of America cap, speaking loudly enough for the overhead microphone to pick up. "I am one of you. I came from nothing. I understand." The miner nodded, though he seemed uncertain, while Vance settled into his chair with a copy of Hillbilly Elegy clearly displayed on the armrest, positioned perfectly for the cameras. He looked confident and comfortable because this was his domain as the authentic voice of forgotten America, the Yale law graduate who never forgot his roots, the individual capable of explaining working-class struggles to elite viewers. Then Representative Jasmine Crockett came in without any grand introduction or show, dressed in a professional prosecutorial navy blue suit and holding a single black portfolio fastened with a simple clasp. She acknowledged the audience members, making eye contact with multiple people, and sat down without shuffling documents or looking at notes. She just sat there, prepared, with the portfolio placed on her lap. The difference was immediate and obvious as Tapper cleared his throat when the red recording light turned on. "Good evening, I'm Jake Tapper, and welcome to this special town hall event where tonight we are exploring a fundamental question: who truly represents working-class Americans?" Tapper stated, gesturing toward his guests and noting that Senator JD Vance of Ohio had established his political identity as the voice of forgotten communities abandoned by globalization, deindustrialization, and what he terms elite indifference. Tapper went on to state that Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas represents a district facing notable economic challenges and has prioritized her efforts on criminal justice reform and expanding economic opportunities. Tapper looked at Vance and said, "Senator, let's begin with you. You have frequently critiqued what you describe as elite activists in Congress, individuals who claim to care about working Americans but do not comprehend their struggles. Could you expand on what you mean?" Vance leaned forward, his body language conveying profound earnestness, and replied, "Jake, I'm glad you asked that because there is a genuine disconnect in Washington that I think ordinary Americans observe and feel daily." He gestured broadly, arguing that there are individuals, often from privileged backgrounds and coastal elite institutions, who claim to represent working Americans but have never actually held a genuine job in their lives. He maintained that they have never had to wonder if they could make their rent payment, have never had to decide between purchasing groceries or medicine, and reside in a different world, yet they presume to tell working people what they require. Then he turned his head, swiveling toward Crockett like a predator spotting its target, saying, "The representative and I represent very different Americas, Jake. I was raised in poverty in Middletown, Ohio, where my mother battled addiction and my grandmother, Mama, raised me. I worked in a grocery store stocking shelves, and I joined the Marines, so I grasp what it is like to struggle because I experienced it." His voice developed a sharper edge as he added, "But some politicians," pointing directly at Crockett, "attended prestigious schools, became attorneys who defend criminals, obtained degrees that working people could never afford, and then they lecture those very same working people about what they need." He stated, "They have never had to get their hands dirty, have never experienced real struggle, and represent activists and special interests rather than genuine Americans." A portion of the audience applauded. Roughly 30 individuals, clearly grouped together with several wearing MAGA hats, while the remainder of the audience sat quietly with skeptical expressions. Crockett made a single notation on her pad, her expression remaining neutral, while Vance was warming up now, sensing an advantage in the situation. "I am here because I actually listen to people. I go to union halls not just for photo opportunities, but to hear what workers are saying, talking to coal miners facing layoffs and steel workers watching their plants close." He claimed to comprehend their values, faith, family, hard work, and traditional American values, and gestured dismissively toward Crockett without looking at her, saying, "Unlike some politicians who spend all their time at fundraisers with Hollywood celebrities and Silicon Valley billionaires, telling working people that their concerns are racist or backward or ignorant, who want to fundamentally transform America instead of preserving what made it great. So yes, Jake, there is a difference between someone who genuinely represents working people, someone who came from that world and understands it deeply, and activists who simply use working-class struggles as talking points while they advance their own elite agendas." He leaned back, looking satisfied, like a competitor who had just delivered a defining statement, while Tapper's eyebrows rose slightly as he asked, "Representative Crockett, Senator Vance appears to be suggesting you do not authentically represent working people. Your response?" The studio became silent as the audience leaned forward, recognizing this was the moment they had anticipated, the confrontation. Crockett put down her pen with deliberate care, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried perfectly through the hushed room as she thanked Jake and the senator for that comprehensive character assessment. She did not smile or display anger, just looked at Vance with the steady gaze of someone who had spent years in courtrooms, saying, "Let me start by addressing the personal aspects since you made this personal. My father, Harold Crockett, was a diesel mechanic who worked at a truck depot for 32 years and came home every night with grease under his fingernails and a sore back. My mother, Brenda, was a public school teacher, third grade, who spent her own money on classroom supplies because the district budget never covered enough." Her voice remained conversational and almost gentle. "I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in South Dallas. Not the Dallas you see on TV, but the Dallas where houses need repair, where grocery stores are few and far between, and where everybody knows everybody because nobody is moving to somewhere better. I paid for college by working 3 jobs. A waitress at a diner for the 5 a.m. shift before my 8 o'clock a.m. class, a retail clerk at Target in the evenings and on weekends, and an office cleaner from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. when I needed extra money for books." She stated she knew what it is like to fall asleep in class because you worked until 2 in the morning, and what it is like to choose between buying lunch or saving money for rent. She met Vance's eyes directly and said, "So when you suggest I do not understand working people, Senator, you are simply wrong. But this is not actually about our personal histories because millions of people have struggled and worked hard. The question isn't where we came from. It is what we do now with the power voters have given us." The audience was completely still, and even the section that had applauded Vance had gone quiet. You mentioned that you listen to working people, Crockett continued, her tone sharpening just slightly. That you go to union halls, that you understand their values, and that you have built your entire political brand on being one of them, the authentic voice of forgotten working-class America. She opened the black portfolio, and the clasp clicked. Not loudly, but in the silence it echoed like a judge's gavel as she said, "I'd like to examine that brand, Senator, with evidence." And Vance shifted in his seat, his confident posture cracking slightly, thinking, "Here we go, the lawyer's tricks, the gotcha questions." "Not tricks, Senator," Crockett said as she lifted the first document from the portfolio. "Facts, public records, your own words, your own votes, your own donor disclosures, all public information filed with the Federal Election Commission and accessible to any citizen who cares to look." She held up the document so the camera could see it and explained, "Because here is what concerns me. You say you represent working people, but when I examine your record, not your rhetoric, but your actual record, I see something very different. I see a pattern of beliefs that change based on who is writing the checks." Tapper leaned forward, sensing the shift, and said, "That's a strong claim, Congresswoman. Can you support it?" Crockett's slight smile was the expression of a prosecutor who had already won the case but still had to present the evidence as she replied, "I can, Jake, in detail, with timestamps." The screens behind them, three large monitors visible to both the audience and the cameras, suddenly flickered to life as a professionally designed timeline appeared, devastatingly clear, titled, "The Vance Evolution, When Beliefs Follow Checks." Crockett stood with the remote in hand and walked to a position where she could see both the screens and Vance entering full presentation mode. This was not a debate anymore. It was a prosecution. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, addressing the audience and the cameras, "what you are about to see is a documented pattern. I am not speculating about Senator Vance's motivations or questioning his character, though others might." After seeing this, she explained she was simply going to show his own public statements cross-referenced with donor disclosures he filed with the FEC, which are public record, and then click the remote. "Let's start with the minimum wage," she said. And the screen showed the before, 2016-2017, as a video clip played of a younger Vance speaking earnestly on a podcast. "Look, I think we need to be honest that a $15 minimum wage would help a lot of struggling families. People working full-time shouldn't be in poverty. That's just basic fairness." He continued in the clip saying, "If you work 40 hours a week in America, you should be able to afford rent and food. That's not radical. That's the bare minimum of what a decent society provides." The clip ended and Crockett let it hang in the air for a moment before summarizing, "That was Senator Vance in 2017 with a clear position. Families working full-time should not be in poverty, support a $15 minimum wage. Now let's look at what happened next," she said as the screen changed to the donation, July 2021, showing a Federal Election Commission filing that was official and undeniable. It read, "Peter Thiel, $10 million recipient, Protect Ohio Values PAC, supporting JD Vance Senate campaign. Date July 15, 2021. 10 million, Crockett said quietly, from one man. Peter Thiel, a billionaire who has publicly stated, and I'm quoting here from his 2009 essay, that he no longer believes freedom and democracy are compatible." She paused, repeating, $10 million to support Senator Vance's campaign. Now let's see what happened 30 days later. The screen displayed the after, August 2021, showing another video of Vance, now in full campaign mode, at a business roundtable with a different tone and message. The $15 minimum wage is a job killer, plain and simple. It would devastate small businesses, force layoffs, and increase automation. He continued in the clip, asserting, "It would hurt the very workers it claims to help. This is exactly the kind of big government mandate that destroys entrepreneurship. And we need to let the market set wages, not have Washington bureaucrats impose one-size-fits-all mandates." The clip ended, and the silence in the studio was profound as Crockett turned to face Vance directly. "1 month, Senator. Peter Thiel, who explicitly rejects democracy, gives you $10 million, and 30 days later you reverse your position on raising the minimum wage. a policy that would directly benefit the working-class Ohioans you claim to represent. That's not, Vance started, but Crockett interrupted. I'm not finished, her voice sharp enough to cut. Let's continue because the pattern becomes very clear with issue 2, prescription drug prices, she said, clicking to the next section and noting this one was particularly instructive. The before 2019 appeared on screen with a quote from an interview during Vance's book tour. We need to stand up to Big Pharma. I watched my mother struggle with addiction partly because of how these companies pushed opioids into communities like mine. The quote continued, they knew what they were doing. They chose profit over people. And now prescription drugs cost too much. Veterans can't afford their medications. Seniors are rationing insulin. And that's morally wrong. We need to fight these companies. Strong words, Senator, Crockett said. Fighting Big Pharma, protecting veterans, ensuring affordable medications. Now, let's see what happened when you got to the Senate, she said as the donation, March 2022, appeared, showing multiple FEC filings, PHRMA, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America PAC, $500,000, Pfizer Executive Director, $150,000, Merck Sr., VP, $175,000, Johnson & Johnson board member, $225,000, additional pharma executives, $650,000, total from pharmaceutical interests, $1.7 million. Time period, March 2022, 1 month, 1.7 million, Senator, in 1 month from pharmaceutical companies and their executives, companies you had spent years saying we needed to fight, she emphasized. Now let's see how you fought them, she said, as the screen showed the after April 14, 2022, displaying a congressional vote record for S. 3700, the Veteran Prescription Drug Affordability Act. The bill's purpose was to cap insulin costs at $35 a month for veterans and allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. The record showed Senator JD Vance, no. Crockett walked toward Vance's chair and he visibly tensed as she said, this vote happened, Senator, April 14, 2022. It is in the congressional record. The bill would have capped insulin costs for veterans at $35 per month, down from an average of $380, and it would have allowed Medicare to negotiate drug prices like the VA does, saving Ohio veterans an average of $2,000 per year. She held up a stack of letters, each in a plastic sleeve, stating, these are from Ohio veterans who wrote to you begging you to support this bill. She selected the top letter, holding it so the camera could see it was from Mike Henderson, Army veteran sergeant, 2 tours in Iraq, Cleveland, Ohio, type 1 diabetic. She read, her voice steady but the words cutting, Senator Vance, I'm spending $380 per month on insulin. After rent and utilities, I sometimes have to choose between insulin and food. I serve my country in Fallujah. I'm asking you to serve me now. Please support S3700. Veterans like me are dying because we can't afford medication. Crockett set the letter down with deliberate care and said, Mike Henderson wrote you 3 times, Senator. 3 times you never responded, not once. But you did vote none, no 1 month after Big Pharma gave you $1.7 million. The audience erupted with shouts from multiple directions. That's disgusting, you fraud. And who do you work for? Answer her. Tapper called for quiet, but even he looked shaken, while a man in a veteran's cap in the 3rd row was shaking his head slowly, his face twisted in disgust. A woman next to him with nurse's scrubs visible under her jacket was crying quietly, and Vance's face had gone from red to pale as he said, those numbers are out of context. The bill had other provisions that were problematic. It was 4 pages long, Crockett said. Would you like me to read it? I have it right here. There were no problematic provisions. There was insulin cost caps and Medicare negotiation. That is it. You voted no because your donors told you to, she said, and clicked to the next slide before he could respond, saying, but let's continue because we are not done yet with issue 3, gun safety. The before 2019 played an audio recording of Vance on a podcast, his voice thoughtful and measured. I think there are some common sense things we can do on guns. I'm a gun owner myself. I grew up in a house with guns. I took my kids shooting, he continued in the recording. But I also have kids in school, and the idea that we can't even have background checks that actually work, that we can't have red flag laws so dangerous people can't get weapons, that seems insane to me. We can protect the Second Amendment and protect kids at the same time. These aren't mutually exclusive. The recording ended and the screen showed the donation, September 2021, with FEC filings showing the National Rifle Association PAC gave $350,000, Gun Owners of America PAC gave $175,000, and individual donations from gun industry executives totaled $280,000 for a total of $805,000. Then the after, October 2021 to present, showed a montage of video clips, each one more extreme than the last. Vance at a gun show. The Second Amendment shall not be infringed, period, end of story. Any gun control is the first step toward tyranny. Next, Vance on Fox News. Background checks are just a way to build a gun registry so the government can confiscate weapons later. I will never support gun control in any form. And then Vance at a campaign rally. Red flag laws are unconstitutional seizures. They violate due process. They are how tyrannical governments disarm citizens. Followed by Vance in a Senate hearing. Every gun law is an infringement, every single one. Crockett let the silence sit for a moment before asking, 6 years, Senator. 6 years from common sense gun safety to any gun control is tyranny. What changed, your beliefs or your bank account? She clicked to a new slide, and this one made several audience members gasp as a summary appeared on screen, stark and damning. Let me walk you through this pattern, Crockett said, her voice carrying to every corner of the studio. 5 major issues, 5 complete reversals. She counted them on her fingers slowly and deliberately. Minimum wage supported $15 before Thiel's $10 million, opposed it after. Prescription drugs wanted to stand up to Big Pharma before they gave him $1.7 million. Voted against drug price reform after. Gun safety supported common sense laws before the gun lobby gave him $800,000, called all gun control tyranny after. Union organizing supported workers' rights before anti-union PACs gave him $2.3 million, voted against the PRO Act after. Climate change called it a crisis before fossil fuel companies gave him $1.8 million, called climate action a job killer after. She paused, letting each example sink in, then said, total donations that preceded these reversals, $16.6 million, $16.6 million to abandon your stated beliefs. She looked at Vance and said, this isn't about political evolution, Senator. This isn't about studying issues more deeply or being persuaded by better arguments. This is transactional. Donor writes check, Senator changes position. It is that simple. It is that corrupt. Vance sputtered, that's not, you are twisting, but Crockett interrupted. I am quoting your own words. I am showing your own donor reports. I am displaying your own votes. Which part is twisted, Senator? The part where you took the money or the part where you changed your positions? Before he could answer, she clicked to the next section saying, but let's move from political positions to actual people because you claim to be the voice of working-class Ohio. So let's examine who you actually listen to when they need help. The screen changed to show a photograph of an elderly man with a weathered face, an oxygen tank, and coal dust still visible in the creases of his hands. The text read, James Cooper, 62, coal miner, Cadiz, Ohio, 34 years underground. Crockett's voice softened slightly, becoming more of a storyteller than a prosecutor, as she detailed that James Cooper worked in Ohio coal mines for 34 years, starting when he was 18 and working every shift they gave him to support his family of 4 kids, who all went to college, the first in their family. She paused and explained, Mr. Cooper has black lung disease, pneumoconiosis. His lungs are failing and he needs supplemental oxygen 24 hours a day just to breathe. Every breath is a struggle. With another click, a document appeared, a petition with dozens of signatures. Crockett stated that in March 2023, Mr. Cooper and 12 other retired miners submitted this petition to Senator Vance's office asking for support on the Black Lung Benefits Act, a bill to extend health care coverage for miners with occupational lung disease. Simple request. Help us breathe, she said. James Cooper drove 3 hours from Cadiz to Columbus, Crockett continued. 3 hours with an oxygen tank at 62 years old, with lungs that are basically scar tissue because he believed you would help, Senator, because you had said you understood coal miners, because you had grown up in Ohio, because you were supposed to be one of them. She clicked again, and security camera footage appeared on the monitors, time-stamped, official, and undeniable, showing an elderly man with an oxygen tank moving slowly and laboriously into the frame. He approached a desk in what was clearly a Senate office reception area, spoke to the receptionist, handed over papers, and after the receptionist smiled and said something, the man nodded, said something back, and slowly left, pulling his oxygen tank behind him. That was March 15th, 2023, Crockett said, adding that Senator Vance's office told Mr. Cooper that the senator was unavailable but that someone would follow up within 2 weeks. She looked at Vance and said, "Today is October 27th, 2025, 31 months later. Want to guess how many times your office followed up with James Cooper?" The silence stretched as Vance opened his mouth but said nothing. "0, Crockett said. "Not a call, not a letter, not an email, nothing. Radio silence. But do you know what Senator Vance was doing on March 15th, 2023, the day James Cooper was in his Columbus office pulling an oxygen tank?" A new document appeared, Vance's schedule, clearly leaked by someone in his office and marked confidential. Daily schedule, March 15th, 2023, 6 p.m., location, Washington, D.C., event, private fundraiser, Murray Energy executives, minimum donation, $5,000 per person, expected raise, $400,000. Crockett's voice was very quiet now as she said, Senator Vance was in Washington, D.C., and at a fundraiser hosted by executives from Murray Energy, a coal company that has spent millions fighting against black lung benefits, the same benefits James Cooper was asking for. She looked directly at him and said, "James Cooper spent his last $200 on gas and a hotel room to drive to Columbus to ask his senator for help breathing, and you were in D.C. raising money from coal executives who profit when miners like James Cooper don't get benefits." In the audience, a woman stood up abruptly. She was maybe 60, wearing a T-shirt that read "Coal Miner's Daughter" with a photo of a young man in mining gear, and tears streamed down her face. She did not speak, just stood there staring at Vance with an expression of pure betrayal as the cameras found her and zoomed in, capturing an image that would become iconic. Vance looked at her, then looked away, his jaw working but no words coming. "That's Rebecca Cooper," Crockett said quietly. "James Cooper's daughter. Would you like to tell the senator what happened to your father, Rebecca?" The woman's voice was thick with tears but surprisingly steady as she said, "He died 6 weeks ago, black lung. He suffocated to death over 3 days in a hospital. He kept asking if the senator had called, if there was going to be help. He believed in you until the very end," she said, then sat down, leaving the studio dead silent except for her quiet crying. Crockett did not move immediately, letting the moment breathe and letting every person in the studio and watching at home feel it. Then she clicked to the next image, showing David Martinez, Marine Corps veteran, Iraq, 2004-2005, who lives in Toledo, with a formal military photo of a young Marine in dress blues and an American flag in the background, the look of determined youth in his eyes. "Mr. Martinez has been trying to get an appointment with Senator Vance for 15 months, Crockett said. 15 months, 11 requests through the Senate office contact form, 7 phone calls to the district office, 2 letters sent certified mail. She displayed the documentation, each form submission, each call log, each certified mail receipt. Mr. Martinez wanted to discuss VA healthcare access. Senator, you know that Northern Ohio has only one full-service VA hospital, right? Wait times for appointments average 67 days. Some veterans are dying while on waiting lists." She showed an email from Vance's office responding to Mr. Martinez's 11th request. "Thank you for contacting Senator Vance. Your issue is important to us. Due to high volume, we cannot accommodate all meeting requests at this time." Crockett looked out at the audience and asked, "Mr. Martinez is here tonight. Would you stand up, sir?" A man in his 40s wearing a Marine Corps cap rose from the third row as the cameras found him, his face showing the weathering of combat, a scar along his jawline, and eyes that had seen too much but also held strength and dignity. "Mr. Martinez," Crockett said, "how many attempts did you make to meet with Senator Vance about veterans' health care?" 11, ma'am. Over 15 months, his voice carrying the clipped precision of military training. "And how many times did you get a meeting?" 0, ma'am. "Thank you for your service, Mr. Martinez. Please sit," she said. Then she turned to Vance, saying, 11 attempts, 15 months, a Marine who served in Fallujah, too busy to meet with him. "But, Senator, your schedule during that same 15-month period shows you had time for 16 meetings with pharmaceutical lobbyists." 16. The same pharmaceutical companies that benefit from keeping VA drug prices high, but no time for a Marine. Vance tried to respond, saying, "We have limited staff. We can't meet with everyone," but Crockett cut in, "You found time for them, just not for a Marine." Before he could respond, she moved to the final constituent story, Youngstown, Ohio, February 2023. Republic Steel announces the closure of a processing facility with 412 jobs lost. Images appeared on screen of steel plant workers leaving for the last time, union meetings and protest signs. Crockett explained that the Youngstown Steelworkers Union Local 1462 requested an emergency meeting with Senator Vance. "These were union members who voted for you, Senator, who believed your promises about fighting for Ohio manufacturing. They wanted you to pressure Republic Steel to delay the closure while they looked for a buyer. Save the jobs, save the community." A letter appeared on screen from the union to Vance's office. "Senator Vance, our members are your constituents. Many of us voted for you because you promised to fight for Ohio manufacturing and Ohio workers. We need you to meet with us and with Republic Steel management. Please help us save these jobs." "Your response," Crockett said, showing an email from Vance's chief of staff. "The senator believes in free market solutions. He cannot interfere with private business decisions." She let that sit for a moment. Free market solutions cannot interfere. That was February 2023, she noted. Another document appeared, phone logs and internal schedules. "But here's what's interesting, Senator. In June 2023, 4 months after telling steelworkers you cannot interfere with private business, you personally called the CEO of Republic Steel." The phone log showed June 14th, 2023, 11:47 a.m., duration 23 minutes. "Long conversation," she remarked. "Why the sudden interest?" Financial documents appeared showing that in May 2023, one of Peter Thiel's investment firms, you remember Peter Thiel, the man who gave you $10 million, expressed interest in purchasing Republic Steel assets as the closure made them cheap. Really cheap. She showed the acquisition documents revealing Thiel's firm bought the facility for $40 million, about 30% of its value when it was operational, and noted they were now running it with non-union labor at lower wages. "And according to these emails, also leaked by your office staff, your office helped facilitate meetings between Thiel's representatives and Republic Steel management," she said. Crockett walked right up to Vance's chair and said, "So to summarize, too busy to meet with workers trying to save their jobs, but plenty of time to help your billionaire donor buy those jobs at a discount and reopen the plant without the union. Is that what representing working people looks like, Senator?" That is a gross mischaracterization," Vance stammered. "It's all documented," Crockett said, holding up a thick folder. "Phone logs, meeting schedules, emails, all from your office, all leaked by staffers who couldn't stomach what they were seeing. Would you like to examine them?" And she did not wait for an answer as she walked back to her position and clicked to a new slide saying, "But don't take my word for it, Senator. Let's look at how you actually spend your time. Not your public calendar that is always scrubbed clean, your real calendar, the one you don't want voters to see." The screen filled with calendar entries showing 3 months of appointments, meetings, and calls, a detailed record. "This is from that leak I mentioned. An anonymous source in your office, someone who became disturbed by what they were witnessing. I verified its authenticity by cross-referencing with your public appearances and FEC filings. Everything checks out. She clicked through methodically, covering March through May 2023, 90 days. Let's count meetings by category. Meetings with donors, billionaires, lobbyists. Peter Thiel or his representatives, 4 meetings. Pharmaceutical lobbyists, 7 meetings. Tech company executives, 6 meetings. Banking industry lobbyists, 5 meetings. Defense contractors, 3 meetings. Real estate developers, 4 meetings. Oil and gas lobbyists, 6 meetings. Total meetings with wealthy donors and their representatives, 35 meetings in 90 days. Meetings with Ohio constituents, non-donors. Town halls, 0. Open office hours, 0. Meetings with union representatives, 0. Meetings with community organizations, 1 15-minute photo op at a food bank. Total substantive meetings with working-class Ohioans, effectively 0. The numbers hung on the screen, stark and damning, as she continued. But the calendar has annotations, Senator, notes you made to yourself about these meetings. Let's look at a few. She zoomed in on specific entries. March 17th, Thiel call Steel acquisition, avoid press. April 3rd, pharma lunch, $250,000 commitment if vote right on HR 5376. April 22nd, meeting with crypto brothers need talking points that sound populist. Crockett's voice was icy as she said, sound populist. Your own words, Senator. Not be populist, not represent working people, just sound like it. Instructions to yourself on how to fake authenticity while meeting with cryptocurrency executives. She clicked to one more annotation, and this one made audible gasps ripple through the audience. At the top of the March calendar, in bold, priority this quarter, donors greater than $100,000 get FaceTime. Everyone else gets form letters unless media present. The audience erupted with shouts from multiple directions. You're a fraud! Who elected you, the donors or us? Resign, Tapper gave repeatedly, but the anger was palpable and building. Crockett did not raise her voice, did not need to. She just stood there letting Vance's own words condemn him. Your own calendar, Senator, your own priority list. Donors who give over $100,000 get meetings. Working people get form letters. Unless there are cameras, then you will show up, put on your work boots, shake some hands for the photo op, and leave. She closed the portfolio slowly and said, that is not representation, Senator. That is performance art. That is theater. You are not a public servant. You are an actor playing a public servant. And your real constituents are not the people who voted for you. It is the people who bought you. Vance tried to mount a defense, his face cycling between red anger and pale fear, shouting, this is a partisan hit job. These documents are taken out of context. I have fought for Ohio. I have held dozens of town halls. Name one, Crockett said immediately. In the last 12 months, name one open town hall where regular constituents could attend without pre-screening or tickets obtained through your campaign. Vance opened his mouth, closed it, and said, I don't have the dates memorized right now. I do, she replied. 0. You have held 0 open town halls in 12 months. You have held 6 events you called town halls, but they required tickets obtained through your campaign website. Effectively, they were donor events disguised as constituent outreach. She explained that the tickets were distributed to supporters, people who had already given money or pledged support, and pulled out another document. Here is the email from your campaign manager to your field staff. Town hall tickets should prioritize donors and likely voters. We don't need protesters or critics filling seats. Vance tried a different tactic, arguing, the calendar is leaked by someone trying to undermine me. It has probably been altered, maybe even fake. I have authenticated it, Crockett said. Cross-referenced every entry with your public appearances, with FEC filings, with lobby disclosure forms. It is accurate. Your own office does not dispute its authenticity. I asked them for a comment before this appearance. They declined to respond because they cannot deny it. Vance's voice rose in anger as he yelled, You're twisting everything. I have fought for Ohio workers. My voting record. Let's examine your voting record, Crockett said, as a new chart appeared on screen titled Voting Record Summary. I'm going to read through 2 lists, Senator. First, bills that would help working-class Ohioans, the people you claim to represent. She read slowly, letting each one land. Minimum wage increase would have raised wages for 680,000 Ohioans. Your vote? No. Prescription drug reform would have saved veterans $2,000 per year. Your vote? No. Paid family leave, 12 weeks for new parents. Your vote? No. Child care assistance subsidies for working families. Your vote? No. The PRO Act, protecting union organizing rights. Your vote? No. Infrastructure investment would have created 45,000 Ohio jobs. Your vote? No. She paused, letting the string of no votes sink in, then said, 6 bills, 6 opportunities to help working Ohioans, 6 no votes. Now let's look at bills that help your donors. Her voice hardened as she read, corporate tax cuts reduces taxes for your top donors. Your vote? Yes. Financial deregulation increases banking industry profits. Your vote? Yes. Environmental rule rollbacks benefits oil and gas companies. Your vote? Yes. Liability limitations protects corporations from lawsuits. Your vote? Yes. Your voting record matches your donor list, Senator, almost perfectly. She added, I had a researcher calculate the correlation, 94%, a 94% correlation between your donors' interests and your votes. She leaned forward slightly and said, that is not representation. That is a transaction. That is political prostitution. The studio fell silent at the words, and even Tapper looked shocked, while Vance looked like he had been slapped and spluttered. How dare you? How dare I? Crockett's voice finally showed emotion, controlled anger, righteous fury, as she asked, how dare you, Senator? How dare you go to Ohio and put on work boots you have never actually worked in and tell coal miners and steel workers and veterans that you are one of them, while you're selling their interest to the highest bidder? She picked up her portfolio and held it like a weapon. Everything I have shown tonight is public record. Your flip-flops, your own words on video, your donations filed with the FEC, your votes, congressional record, your calendar leaked by your own staff who couldn't stomach it anymore, your constituent meetings or lack thereof documented by the people you ignored. She walked back to her chair, sat down, set the portfolio on her lap, and then, in a voice so quiet everyone had to strain to hear, she said, Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you one question, just one. A simple question, but I think it is the most important question of the night. The studio was dead silent, 45 million people watching, every person in the audience leaning forward. You have built your entire political identity on being the authentic voice of working-class America, on understanding their struggles because you lived them, on fighting for the forgotten, the left behind, the people that elites ignore. She paused to let the weight build. But everything I have shown tonight, your flip-flops when donors write checks, your refusal to meet with constituents who need help, your calendar that prioritizes billionaires over coal miners, your votes that align with donor interests, all of it suggests something very different. She paused again as the silence became excruciating. So here is my question, Senator Vance. She looked directly at him as the cameras caught every micro-expression on both their faces. Name one thing, just one. One policy you have fought for, one position you have taken, one vote you have cast that went against your donors' interests but was the right thing to do for working people. Her voice was so gentle it was devastating. One thing you did because it was right, not because someone paid you to do it. One sincere belief you have acted on regardless of the political cost or the financial consequences. She sat back in her chair and said, just one, Senator. That is all I am asking. One authentic position, one moment where you prioritize principles over profit, one time where you were actually the man you claimed to be. Name it. The silence began. 1 second, 2 seconds. Vance opened his mouth, but nothing came out, so he closed it. 5 seconds. His eyes darted around, to Tapper, to his chief of staff standing in the wings, back to Crockett, to the audience, searching for an escape that did not exist. 10 seconds. His hand reached for his water glass, picked it up and put it down without drinking, while his throat worked like he was trying to swallow something that would not go down. 15 seconds. Someone in the audience coughed. and it sounded like a gunshot in the silence, while someone else whispered something barely audible that the boom mic caught. He can't answer. 20 seconds. Vance's lips parted again, saying, there are many things I have consistently. But the words died because he could not finish the sentence, as there was no sentence to finish. 21 seconds. In CNN's control room, a producer made a decision that would become legendary in television history, as the chyron at the bottom of the screen changed to Senator Vance silent for 21 seconds when asked to name one sincere belief. Then, as the silence stretched into a 20-second second, the longest 21 seconds in American politics, finally Vance tried to speak. That's not, you can't reduce complex policy decisions to, this isn't a fair question. I am not asking you to reduce anything, Crockett said, her voice still gentle, which made it worse. I am asking you to name one time you prioritized principles over profit, one time in 6 years, one vote, one position, one fight, just one. You're trying to make this into some kind of gotcha, he retorted. It's not a gotcha, Senator. It's the most basic question we should ask any politician. Do you stand for anything, or do you just stand for whoever is funding you? Vance began, I have consistently fought for, look, my entire career. But he stopped, because what could he say? Every example he might give, she had the donor records to refute it. Every position he might claim, she had the video of him saying the opposite. Every vote he might cite, she had the receipts showing who paid for it. He had nothing, and everyone watching could see it. In the audience, Rebecca Cooper stood up again, the coal miner's daughter, the woman whose father had died waiting for Vance's help. My father believed in you, she said, her voice breaking but carrying clearly. He voted for you. He thought you were different. He thought you understood what it was like to struggle. He thought you would help people like him. Tears streamed down her face as she continued. But you were at fundraisers. You were taking money from the companies that killed him. And when he died, when he suffocated to death over 3 days, he was still asking if you had called, if you had helped. He believed in you until the very end. She looked at Vance with an expression of pure heartbreak and said, and you had nothing for him, just like you have nothing now, just silence. She sat down, and then slowly, deliberately, other audience members stood. David Martinez, the Marine veteran, standing, not speaking, just standing at attention with hands at his sides, looking at Vance with the disappointment of a soldier betrayed by command. A steel worker from Youngstown, still wearing his union jacket, stood. A teacher with papers in hand showing budget cuts stood. A nurse in scrubs stood. One by one, about 50 people in the audience rose. All Ohioans, all people who had tried to reach Vance. All met with silence, all ignored while donors got meetings. They stood in silence. The same silence Vance had just demonstrated. The silence of someone who has nothing to say because there is nothing authentic to say. The cameras captured all of it. It was captured. Every standing figure, every face, every expression of betrayal and disappointment and recognition that they had been fooled. Vance looked at them, his confidence completely gone. And for just a moment, his expression showed something almost like shame, almost like recognition of what he had become. Then anger flooded back in, and his voice cracked as he yelled, "This is orchestrated! This is a setup! You brought in plants!" "Those are not plants." Senator Crockett's voice was quiet but firm. "Those are your constituents, the people you claim to represent, the people you ignored while meeting with donors, real Ohioans, real voters, real Americans who believed your promises." She stood slowly and said, "And the question still stands unanswered. Name one sincere belief you have acted on. Just one." Tapper, looking like he wished he could be anywhere else, tried to mediate, saying, "Senator, Congresswoman Crockett asked you a direct question. You have had time to consider it. Can you answer? One policy position you have taken that went against donor interests but aligned with your principles." Vance stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor, and declared, "I am not going to sit here and be ambushed with selective facts and staged audience members. This is exactly what is wrong with politics. Gotcha journalism and partisan attacks instead of substantive. I asked for substance," Crockett said, still seated, still calm. Name one substantial position. You can't because there isn't one. Your entire career is for sale, Senator, and everyone can see it now. Vance grabbed his things, his book, his notes, his phone, yelling, I don't have to defend my record to someone who is clearly working with. Your own staff leaked that calendar, Senator, Crockett interrupted. Your own people couldn't stomach what you had become. That's not me attacking you. That's the people closest to you saying this is wrong. Vance started walking toward the exit, but he had to walk past the standing audience members, past Rebecca Cooper, whose father died waiting for help, past David Martinez, the Marine he couldn't find time for, past the steelworkers whose jobs he helped sell to his donor. As he passed, an elderly man, maybe 70, wearing a Veterans of Foreign Wars cap with pins from Vietnam, spoke, his voice quiet but carrying in the silent studio. I voted for you, son, believed you were one of us, that you understood, that you would be different from the politicians who forgot where they came from. He shook his head slowly and said, But you're worse. At least they were honest about being elites. You pretended to be us while you sold us out. Vance did not respond, just kept walking, and the door closed behind him with a heavy thud. For a moment, no one moved. Then Tapper, trying to process what had just happened, said, we are going to take a brief break, and when we come back. But no one was listening. The standing audience members remained standing. Some were crying, some were angry. All were processing the same realization. They had been lied to systematically, professionally, by someone who had made a career out of pretending to be one of them. Within an hour, 21 seconds of silence was trending worldwide. And the clip had 100 million views by midnight. Not the whole interview. Just that moment. Crockett asking the question, Vance's face cycling through expressions, the silence stretching, the chyron, the longest 21 seconds in American politics. Social media exploded as hashtag Who Do You Work? Trended for 3 days. Memes proliferated, split-screen comparisons of politicians who can answer questions next to JD Vance for 21 seconds, videos of people asking their representatives the same question, compilations of Vance's flip-flops set to music. Vance tried to respond on Twitter at 11:47 p.m., writing, Tonight was a coordinated smear campaign by radical Democrats and fake news media. I have fought tirelessly for Ohio, and my record speaks for itself. Don't believe the edited footage and partisan attacks. The truth will come out. But it was live television, 45 million witnesses, no editing, no spin. Just 21 seconds of silence when asked to name one authentic belief. By morning, the political landscape had shifted. Peter Thiel's spokesperson issued a terse statement. Mr. Thiel does not comment on his political investments or relationships. Neat. 3 corporate PACs issued statements suspending donations to Vance's future campaigns, pending review of their strategic priorities, and 2 pharmaceutical executives who donated heavily requested meetings with Vance's team to reassess their strategic alignment. Relentless. The media coverage was relentless. CNN ran the clip every hour. MSNBC brought in ethics experts and former senators to discuss what the silence meant. And even Fox News struggled to defend it. Tucker Carlson, usually a reliable Vance defender, looked genuinely troubled, saying, Look, I like JD. I think he's smart. I've had him on the show many times, but that silence. I don't know how you come back from that. When you can't name a single principle you've stood for without getting paid? That's not a gotcha question, that's a character question. And he failed it. Within 48 hours, investigations began. The Senate Ethics Committee announced a formal inquiry into potential coordination between Vance's office and donor interests, possible quid pro quo arrangements in voting patterns, use of Senate resources for campaign fundraising, and preferential treatment for donors in constituent services. The Ohio Attorney General, a Republican, notably announced a state-level review into whether Vance's office violated constituent service requirements, allegations of preferential treatment based on donation status, potential campaign finance violations, and misuse of state resources. And the whistleblowers came forward. 5 staffers from Vance's office, some current, some former, gave interviews. Sarah Morrison, 28, former field director, speaking to CNN, said, "I quit 3 months ago because I couldn't look voters in the eye anymore. We were told explicitly donors get meetings, regular constituents get form letters. If there's media present, then we schedule a photo op. But it's performative. The calendar that was leaked, that is real. I saw it every day. Donors greater than $100,000 get FaceTime. That was the priority. Not helping people, not public service, just keeping the money flowing." She started crying as she said, "I got into politics because I wanted to help people, but this isn't public service. This is just fundraising with a government salary." Satieha. Marcus Johnson, 45, current legislative aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, said, "The flip-flops Congresswoman Crockett showed? We joke about them in the office. We call it following the money. Someone donates big, and within weeks the senator's position shifts. We write talking points to justify it, but everyone knows what's really happening. It's transactional. Everything is for sale." By the end of the first week, the political fallout was catastrophic. A poll showed Vance's approval in Ohio, pre-interview 48%, 1 week post-interview 31%. Among key demographics, union households dropped from 44% approval to 19%, veterans from 51% to 22%, independent voters from 42% to 18%, self-identified working class from 53% to 20%. Fundraising halted, major donors backed away. Corporate PAC donations were suspended, small dollar contributions were down 73%, and grassroots donations were down 81%. One major donor, speaking anonymously to the Washington Post, said, "I gave $50,000 in 2022 because I thought he was authentic. The working class background, the Marine Service, the understanding of forgotten America, I believed it. Now I see it was just branding. He's not authentic. He's just good at pretending. I want my money back, and I will never give to him again." Political isolation set in as Republican senators started avoiding questions about Vance, offering comments like, "That's between the senator and his constituents," or, "I haven't had a chance to watch the full interview. No comment at this time." One Republican senator, speaking to Politico on background, said, "He's toxic, absolutely toxic. No one wants to be associated with him right now. That 21 seconds, you can't spin that. You can't recover from that. It's over." In Ohio, the backlash was immediate and visceral. The United Steelworkers Ohio chapter issued a statement. "We endorsed Senator Vance in 2022 based on his promises to fight for Ohio manufacturing and workers' rights. That was a mistake. His record shows he serves billionaires and corporations, not working families. We are formally retracting our endorsement and calling for his resignation." The Ohio AFL-CIO stated, "Senator Vance has betrayed the trust of working families. His voting record, his donor list, and his demonstrated priorities show clearly that he represents wealth and corporate interests, not workers. We can no longer support him in any capacity." Union members in Youngstown organized a 21 seconds of silence vigil outside the closed Republic Steel facility. 412 former workers, everyone who had lost their jobs when the plant closed, stood in silence for 21 seconds, then chanted, "Who do you work for? Who do you work for?" In Cleveland, veterans groups organized empty chair protests at Vance's district offices. They brought folding chairs with names taped to them, names of veterans who had tried to get meetings and been denied, and set up the chairs in front of Vance's office, each one labeled. David Martinez, Marine Corps. 11 requests, 0 meetings. In Toledo, David Martinez himself launched a recall petition, and although Ohio law does not technically allow Senate recalls, the petition became a referendum on Vance's conduct, gathering 180,000 signatures within a week, 340,000 within 2 weeks, and over 600,000 within a month, enough to have recalled him if the mechanism existed. Primary challengers emerged. Matt Davidson, Ohio State Senator and former steelworker, announced his campaign saying, "I'm running because the Republican Party should stand for working people, not billionaires. JD Vance has forgotten that. Or more accurately, he never believed it. He used us. He used our stories and our struggles to build a political brand, and then he sold that brand to the highest bidder. Ohio deserves better. America deserves better. Karen Hughes, businesswoman and Marine Corps DUI veteran, stated, "I served my country in uniform. JD Vance served his donors in a suit. There's a difference. I'm running to show that there are still Republicans who believe in public service over profit, in principles over PAC money. We can be better than this." The phrase "vanced" entered the political lexicon. Political analysts referred to the Vance test. Can you name one position you have taken against donor interests? It became standard in interviews and debates. Candidates who could not answer got vanced, a new term meaning exposed as purely transactional. Journalists started asking it of every politician. We're going to give you the Vance test. Name one vote or position you've taken that went against your major donors' interests. Some politicians had good answers, many did not, but everyone now had to reckon with the question. Ohio's legislature, embarrassed by the national attention and constituent pressure, passed a series of reforms. The Constituent Service Standards Act required monthly reporting of constituent meetings versus donor meetings, mandated minimum office hours for non-donor constituents, and created penalties for preferential treatment based on donation status. The Lobbying Transparency Enhancement Act required disclosure of all contacts between lobbyists and elected officials within 48 hours, created a public database of meetings, calls, and communications, and banned coordination between donors and legislative activity. The Ethics in Representation Act established independent oversight of Senate offices, created whistleblower protections for staffers, and required disclosure of all campaign fundraising activities. Other states followed. Within 6 months, 23 states had passed some version of Vance laws, transparency requirements designed to prevent the kind of donor-driven politics Crockett had exposed. For Crockett herself, the attention was overwhelming, including a Time magazine profile titled "The Prosecutor Who Exposed Political Theater," and invitations poured in: Harvard Kennedy School, guest lecture on ethics and politics, AFL-CIO National Convention, keynote speaker, American Legion, address on representing veterans, Yale Law School, panel on money and politics. She declined most, focusing on her district work, but her influence grew. When asked about the interview on Meet the Press, she was characteristically direct. "I didn't set out to destroy Senator Vance's career. I set out to ask him a simple question that every voter should ask their representatives. What do you actually believe in? If you can't answer that, you shouldn't be in office. It's that simple." Mere 18 months later, Ohio's Republican primary results were Matt Davidson, former steelworker, 41%, Karen Hughes, Marine veteran, 36%, JD Vance, incumbent, 23%. Vance lost decisively in his own party's primary. His concession speech was brief and bitter. The political establishment and the fake news media have spent the last year and a half trying to destroy me with selective facts and gotcha questions. They succeeded. But the truth is that I have always fought for Ohio, always put working people first, and my record speaks for itself. But he still could not name one example, and everyone noticed. He largely disappeared from politics after that. Resurfaced as a consultant for a venture capital firm, still occasionally posted on social media, still claimed he had been railroaded by partisan attacks. But when people heard his name, they thought, "Oh, that guy who couldn't answer the question, the 21 seconds." His Wikipedia entry's first line eventually read, "JD Vance is an author and former politician best known for his 2016 memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, and for his 21 seconds of silence when asked to name a sincere political belief during a 2025 CNN interview." That's what he had become, a cautionary tale, a meme, the answer to what happens when political ambition completely divorces from authentic belief. 2 years after the interview, PBS aired a documentary, 21 Seconds When Silence Spoke Volumes, featuring interviews with everyone involved. Rebecca Cooper, James Cooper's daughter, said, "My father believed in the American dream. He believed that if you worked hard, if you played by the rules, if you served your community, then your leaders would serve you back. JD Vance betrayed that belief. He betrayed my father, And when my father died, still believing Vance would help, still waiting for that call, that's when I knew something had to change. She wiped her eyes and said, "That interview didn't just expose one politician, it exposed a whole system where money matters more than people. And maybe, I hope, it's the start of changing that." David Martinez, the Marine veteran, now a state representative himself, said, "That interview taught me something important. We can't just hope politicians will represent us. We can't just vote and then go home and trust they'll do the right thing. We have to hold them accountable every single day, ask hard questions, demand real answers, and when they can't give them, when they give you that silence, that's when you know you need new representatives." He smiled slightly and added, "That's why I ran for state legislature. Someone had to. And now I ask on every bill, every vote, who does this serve? If it serves donors more than people, I vote no. Simple as that." Sarah Morrison, the former staffer, said, "Working in that office, I saw how the system really works. It's not about ideology or party or even policy. It's about money. Donors get access. Donors get influence. Donors get results. Everyone else gets a form letter and a photo op if they're lucky." She looked directly at the camera and said, "I had to expose it. I had to leak that calendar because if people don't see how it really works, nothing will ever change, and we deserve better than a government that is for sale to the highest bidder." The most powerful segment came from footage no one had seen before. James Cooper, the coal miner, 6 months before he died, in a home video recorded by his daughter. He is on oxygen, breathing laboriously, watching the news as a clip plays of JD Vance at a campaign event talking about fighting for coal miners and never forgetting where he came from. James Cooper, his voice weak but clear, speaks to his daughter behind the camera. "He don't fight for us, Becky. He fights for the people who own the mines, for the companies that don't want to pay for black lung benefits. There's a difference between saying you're with us and actually being with us," he continued. He learned to say the words, but he don't mean them, never did. He paused to catch his breath, the oxygen machine humming, then said, "When I drove to Columbus, I thought maybe if I could just talk to him, show him my medical records, explain what it's like, maybe he'd remember where he came from, remember what it's like to struggle." Another pause. "Another," then he added, "But he wasn't there. He's never there. Not for us. He's wherever the money is." The documentary cut to black after that, then silence. 21 seconds of it, screen completely black. Then, quietly, Rebecca Cooper's voice said, "He died still believing in America, just not in the people who claim to represent it." Where are they now? Jasmine Crockett still represents Texas's 30th district. She has turned down offers to run for Senate governor and one informal inquiry about being on a presidential ticket. "I'm not interested in climbing political ladders," she told one interviewer. "I'm interested in doing the work my district elected me to do, represent them, and that is what I'm going to do. The moment I start thinking about the next office instead of the people I currently serve, I become what I criticized." Her office wall displays her grandfather's Purple Heart, a photo with Rebecca Cooper at James Cooper's memorial service, a handwritten note from David Martinez, "Thank you for asking the question no one else would," a child's drawing from a constituent showing a woman at a podium with a speech bubble, "Tell the truth," and a small plaque, a gift from Ohio veterans groups, 21 seconds that changed politics. When asked if she regrets the confrontation, she is direct. "I don't regret asking a question every voter should ask. I regret that so many politicians can't answer it. That should concern all of us." JD Vance, after losing the primary, largely disappeared from politics, resurfaced as a consultant for a venture capital firm with ties to Peter Thiel. Occasionally posts on social media, still claiming he was railroaded by partisan media. His book, Hillbilly Elegy, saw sales actually increase after the controversy, but for a different reason. People wanted to see if they could find the moment where the authentic person became the political product, with reviews on Amazon filling with comments like, "Reading this after watching the interview, trying to figure out when he stopped believing his own words." He declined to be interviewed for the PBS documentary and declined most interview requests. The few times he has spoken publicly, he still hasn't answered the question. The Ohio constituents, Rebecca Cooper became an advocate for black lung disease research and minors' health care rights. She testified before Congress. Crockett was in the hearing, and they embraced before Rebecca testified. And she now runs a nonprofit, the James Cooper Foundation for Minors' Health. My father's death wasn't meaningless, she says. It exposed what was happening, and maybe it prevents other fathers from dying while politicians ignore them for donors. David Martinez won his state legislature race by 23 points. The first bill he introduced was the Constituent First Act, requiring state officials to hold monthly open office hours and report quarterly on constituent services, and it passed unanimously. Turns out, he says, when you actually ask politicians to be accountable to voters, most of them support it. It's only the ones who don't want accountability who object. The Youngstown steelworkers, some found new jobs, some retired, some moved away, but they organized, creating a voter education project called Don't Get Vanced. They research candidates before every election, distribute scorecards showing each candidate's donor lists, voting records, and constituent service metrics. Then they ask every candidate the question, name one position you have taken against your donor's interests. They record the answers or the silence, and they publish everything online. On a Tuesday afternoon, 2 years after the interview, a high school civics class in Dayton, Ohio, watches the Crockett-Vance confrontation as part of their curriculum. The teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, pauses the video at the 21-second mark. Vance's face, frozen on screen, eyes darting, mouth slightly open, caught in the moment of having nothing to say. "What do you notice?" she asks her class. A student named Marcus raises his hand and says, he can't answer because he doesn't actually believe in anything, except getting money from donors. Another student, Sarah, adds, but Ms. Crockett stayed calm the whole time. She didn't yell or call him names, she just asked a question and showed receipts. That's more powerful than screaming. A third student, Elena, says, the people standing up, that was the most powerful part to me. They didn't yell either, they just stood there, silent, like they were saying, we see you now, we see who you really are. Ms. Rodriguez nods and says, this is what accountability looks like. Not just voting every few years, not just complaining on social media, but asking the right questions, demanding real answers, presenting evidence, and when you don't get answers, making sure everyone sees the silence. She resumes the video and the class watches in complete silence as Vance walks out past the standing constituents. When it ends, a student raises her hand, Jessica, who usually sits quietly in the back, and asks, Ms. Rodriguez, could that happen to any politician, even ones we like? Yes, and it should, Ms. Rodriguez replies. No one is above accountability. That is what democracy means. Jessica thinks for a moment, choosing her words carefully, then says, so we should always ask our representatives, who do you work for? What do you actually believe? What have you done that proves it? And if they can't answer, then you have your answer. Ms. Rodriguez smiles and says, silence is an answer, maybe the most honest one. She looks at her class, future voters, future citizens, future people who will have to navigate the complicated intersection of money and politics and representation, and says, here's what I want you to remember from this video. It's not about Republican or Democrat. It's not about conservative or liberal. It's about whether the person representing you actually represents you, whether they work for the people who elected them or the people who funded them. And she continues, it's about whether you're willing to ask hard questions, whether you're willing to demand answers, whether you're willing to stand up literally or figuratively when those answers don't come. A student in the front row, Marcus's twin sister Maria, speaks up saying, my uncle fought in Iraq. He says politicians promise veterans stuff all the time and then forget about them once they're elected. Is that the same thing? It is, Ms. Rodriguez says. Promises are easy, actions are hard. That's why you look at what they do, not what they say. Look at their votes, look at their donor lists, look at who they meet with. The evidence doesn't lie. She pulls up a website on the classroom screen and explains, this is why we have the Open Secrets database. Anyone can look up any politician's donors. Anyone can see their voting record. Anyone can see if their actions match their words. She clicks through several Ohio politicians' records saying, "See, this is all public. You don't need to be an investigator. You just need to care enough to look and ask, does what they say match what they do?" The class spends the next 30 minutes doing exactly that, looking up their own representatives, tracking votes against donor lists, asking the questions Crockett asked. By the end of class, more than half the students have found at least one discrepancy between rhetoric and action in their own representatives' records. "So what do we do about it?" Marcus asks. "You ask them," Ms. Rodriguez says. "You email, you call, you show up at town halls, and you ask, why did you vote this way when you said you believed that? Who asked you to vote this way? Did they also donate to your campaign?" And if they can't answer or won't answer, then you remember that at the next election, and you tell everyone you know, because democracy only works if we hold people accountable. As the bell rings and students file out, Maria hangs back and asks, "Ms. Rodriguez, do you think Senator Vance ever believed the things he said? Like at the beginning?" The teacher considers the question seriously and admits, "I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he started out wanting to represent working people, and somewhere along the way, the money and the power became more important. Or maybe he never did, and it was always just good marketing." She adds, "Does it matter? Not really. Because what matters is what he did, what he prioritized, who he served, and we all saw the answer to that." Maria nods slowly and says, 21 seconds. 21 seconds, Ms. Rodriguez confirms. The longest silence in politics, because it was the one question he couldn't spin or dodge or deflect. Name one sincere belief, just one, and he had nothing. She straightens some papers on her desk and concludes, "Let that be a lesson in democracy. The most powerful weapon isn't a clever speech or a big donation or a slick ad campaign. It's a simple question that demands an honest answer." And silence, Maria says, when you can't answer, tells everyone everything they need to know. Exactly. The war for authentic representation continues. There are still politicians who serve donors over constituents, still systems that reward fundraising over public service, still ways for the wealthy to buy influence. But something changed after that interview, after those 21 seconds. People started asking the question, reporters started asking it, voters started asking it, students in civics classes started asking it. Name one sincere belief you have acted on, just one. And the politicians who could not answer, who gave that same silence, that same desperate search for an example that did not exist, they started losing elections, not all of them, not everywhere, but enough that others noticed. Enough that some politicians started thinking, maybe I should actually have some principles. Maybe I should occasionally vote against my donors if it's the right thing. Maybe I should be able to answer this question. The Vance test became the standard, and American politics slowly, painfully began to shift. Not because of laws or regulations or reform bills, though those helped, but because of one simple question that revealed everything. And 21 seconds of silence that echoed across America, proving that sometimes the most powerful political statement is not a speech, it is the absence of one.